Hi friends, I'm Hope and welcome to my channel where we use science to myth bust and empower you to make informed choices for your health and well-being. Today we're talking about something that is very common within the fitness industry, postural syndromes. You may have heard somebody say, I've got upper cross syndrome, that's why my neck hurts, or lower cross syndrome is why your back is sore. But these are not real medical diagnoses. And in this video, we're going to unpack where they came from, why the science doesn't support them, and what you should focus on instead. So let's start with the history. These syndromes were first described by Vladimir Janda, I hope I'm saying that correctly, a Czech neurologist and physiotherapist. And he coined these terms back in the 1970s and 80s. So he noticed patterns of muscle tightness and weakness in patients with neurological injuries. For example, tight chest and upper traps with weak, deep neck flexors and lower traps. He called that upper crossed syndrome. He also described lower crossed syndrome, which is where hip flexors and back extensors were tight and glutes abdominals were weak. It's important to understand, though, Janda never intended these to be rigid diagnostic labels. He saw them as clinical observations, just patterns that he noticed in some patients. But over time, these ideas were picked up by the fitness industry and turned into something much bigger. Organizations like NASM and Czech Institute began building entire corrective exercise systems around them. Then came other syndromes. Layer syndrome, which is a combination of upper and lower crossed patterns. Pelvic cross syndrome, basically a more localized version of the same thing. Pronation Distortion Syndrome, which blames flat feet for everything up the chain. And more recently, tech neck or text neck, claiming that phone use is destroying our posture. Now, these sound scientific because they have the word syndrome in them, and that is where the problem starts. In medicine, a syndrome means a group of signs and symptoms that consistently occur together and have some known mechanism or outcome. For example, Down syndrome or carpal tunnel syndrome, they're recognized, defined, and diagnosable. None of these fitness syndromes, upper cross, lower cross, pronation distortion, etc., are listed in the ICD-10, which is the international classification of diseases that doctors use. They're also not used in physiotherapy or sports medicine as diagnostic criteria. And why is that, you may ask? Because there is no consistent way to measure them, no agreed upon definitions, and no solid evidence that those patterns predict pain or injury. A personal trainer is not really able to assess these things. A personal trainer can't tell how tight or weak a muscle is by looking at you. Even if they put their hands on you, they still couldn't really tell that. And because of this, one personal trainer might say, you've got upper cross syndrome, and the other might say, you're fine. These labels are so subjective. So when we start treating these labels as actual diagnoses, it creates problems. People begin to believe they're broken. They start obsessing over posture or alignment instead of focusing on movement, strength, and adaptability. It turns normal variation into pathology. You're told your head is too far forward, or your pelvis tilts too much, or your glutes don't fire properly. And suddenly, everyday movement feels risky or wrong. So let's look at what some of the research tells us. A 2024 study tried to build a modern framework for upper cross syndrome. The experts involved agreed that muscle imbalance was only one of the several domains, alongside psychosocial factors and movement control. So even within upper cross syndrome research, there's acknowledgement that posture alone doesn't explain pain. For lower crossed syndrome, a 2022 paper found that while exercise programs show some benefits, the studies are small and the results are inconsistent. Again, movement helps, but that doesn't validate the syndrome itself. When we look at Pronation Distortion Syndrome, a 2017 paper dismantled the idea, showing that foot pronation is normal and controlling it doesn't necessarily reduce the risk of injury. And finally, in the world of the shoulder, a 2022 paper concluded that differences in scapular movement aren't inherently pathological. They're just variations among individuals. So across all of these topics, the pattern is clear. There's a huge variability in human posture, there's no single correct alignment, and there's no reliable link between posture and pain. When these models are treated as medical truth, they shift the focus away from the real goal, which is helping people move and feel better. They make people afraid to bend their back, afraid to sit, afraid to train, unless their posture looks perfect. And the irony is that avoidance, that fear of movement, can actually increase pain sensitivity and reduce confidence. Instead of building capacity and resilience, we end up chasing a static ideal that doesn't exist. That's why evidence-based clinicians have been moving away from posture correction as treatment for pain. The goal is to build strength, movement variety, and confidence, not to chase textbook alignment. Now, if you're worried about posture or these syndromes in any way, it's completely understandable. I know how they have been placed within the industry to make us fearful. Here's what the research does support and what we should focus on. Move regularly and in different ways. Build strength, strong muscles, support joints through a wide range of positions. Load gradually. Tolerance matters much more than alignment. movement and manage your stress and recovery. They influence pain just as much as movement. If you like how certain posture drills or stretches feel, great, keep them, because all movement is good. Just know they're not fixing a syndrome, they're helping your body move. So the next time you hear somebody who's not a doctor mention one of these syndromes, remember, it's a concept from the 1970s that's been stretched far beyond what the evidence supports. Posture is just one piece of our meat suit experience. Movement and variation is normal. You do not need perfect alignment to be healthy, strong, or pain-free. Remember, it's your body, your choice. I'm just here to help you make informed ones. If you found this helpful, please hit subscribe for more science-based myth busting around fitness, movement, and health.